The Château de Maisons, designed by François Mansart from 1630 to 1651, is a prime example of French baroque architecture and a reference point in the history of French architecture. The château is located in Maisons-Laffitte, a northwestern suburb of Paris, in the department of Yvelines, Île-de-France. History. The family of Longueuil, long associated with the Parlement de Paris, had been in possession of part of the seigneury of Maisons since 1460, and a full share since 1602. Beginning in 1630, and for the next decades, René de Longueuil, first president of the Cour des Aides and then président à mortier to the Parlement de Paris, devoted the fortune inherited by his wife, Madeleine Boulons de Crévicoeur, to the construction of a magnificent château. By 1649 he was able to spend the summer months in his new house, but works on the outbuildings continued after that date. Louis XIV visited Maisons in April 1651. The attribution to François Mansart was common knowledge among contemporaries. Charles Perrault reported its reputation. The Château of Maisons, of which he had made all the buildings and all the gardens, is of such a singular beauty that there is not a curious foreigner who does not go there to see it, as one of the finest things that we have in France. Nevertheless, the sole surviving document mentioning Mansart's name is a payment of 20,000 livres from Longueuil in 1657, apparently occasioned by the final completion of the château. A pamphlet with the title La Mansarde accuses the architect of having realized, after completing the construction of the first floor, that he had committed an error in the plans and raised everything built too far in order to commence anew. Perrault emphasizes that the architect had the habit of remodeling certain parts of his buildings more than once, in a search for perfection. This length of time the construction required. At the death of René de Longueuil in 1677, the château passed to his heirs until 1732, and then in succession to the Marquis de Bellefourier, then to the Marquis de Soyecourt. In 1777 it became the property of Louis XVI's brother the Comte d'Artois, who carried out important interior transformations under the direction of his house architect François-Joseph Bellanger. These works were interrupted in 1782 for lack of funds. Maisons ceased to be kept up. Confiscated during the Revolution as national goods, the château was sold in 1798 to an army provisioner, M. Lorchère, again in 1804 to Maréchal Jean Lannes, and finally in 1818 to the Parisian banker Jacques Laffitte. Starting in 1834, Laffitte proceeded to develop the surrounding park as building lots. He tore down the fine stables to furnish construction materials for the purchases. After his daughter the Princess de la Moscova sold the château in 1850, it passed to M. Thomas de Colmar and to the painter Tilman Gromet, who farmed out the small park and demolished the entrance gateway to the forecourt, enclosing the severely reduced space with a wrought iron grille brought from the Château de Mailly in Picardy. In 1905, the state purchased the château to save it from demolition. It was classed a monument historique in 1914. Architecture. The Château de Maisons was built between the Seine and the forest of Saint-Germain-en-Laye, with its garden front oriented to the southeast. Originally it comprised the garden, a small park of 33 hectares and a large outer park of 300 hectares. The visitor arrived by one of two avenues that crossed an 80 intersection before the gate to the Cordon. The principal central axis led to the forest, the cross-axis through the village to the southwest and to the river, thence on to Paris. Three gateways stood at the far ends of the avenues, on one side and the other of the avant-cour. Mansart constructed the stables, masterworks of architecture whose monumental character gave a preview of those that would be built at Versailles and Chantilly. Of these works there exists only a grotto, that served also to water the horses. The chateau stood on a rectangular platform outlined in the French manner with a dry moat. The cordon was defined by terraces. The central block extends symmetrically into short wings, composed of several sections, each with its own roof line, with raked roofs and tall chimney stacks, in several ranges, with a broken facade reminiscent of the planning in work of Pierre Lescot and Philibert Delorme in the preceding century. The single-pile construction typical of its epoch carries 3 stories, a basement supporting a ground floor and piano nobile with 3 attic floors above. Interiors. The grand central entrance vestibule of stone was originally enclosed by exceptionally fine wrought iron grilles, which are today at the Louvre. Large bas-reliefs of the seasons were executed by Gilles Guérin after drawings provided by Jacques Sarrazin, who oversaw all the sculpture provided for Maisons. There are lunettes representing the elements, for which Sarrazin's drawings also survive. This vestibule gives onto 2 state apartments. The apartment on the left, called the appartement des captifs, was that of René de Longueuil. It has retained its original decor. The chimney-piece of the corner room, the chamber de parade, represents a bas-relief medallion of Louis XIII supported by captives and a frieze of the triumph of Louis XIII. Works of Gilles Guérin that have given a name to the suite of rooms. The apartment on the right, called the appartement de la Renommée, was entirely redecorated by Bellanger for the Comte d'Artois in a discreet neo-classical style quite in keeping with the general classic style of the chateau. The staircase was of a type that Mansart originated at Balleroy, in which the central space is left open, so that the flights climb the 4 walls. On the parade floor, the apartment to the right, called the appartement des Aigles for the Empire-style decoration affected by Marie-Gulin in expectation of the visit of Napoleon, is undistinguished. That on the left, on the other hand, the appartement du Roi, is also called l'Italien in that it is covered in false vaulting. The apartment consists of a vast salle des fêtes employed also in the character of a guardroom, with a tribune for musicians. It opens into the Salon d'Hercule from the painting of Hercules defeating the Hydra that used to be featured on the chimney breast, with sculptures by Guérin. In the end pavilion is a domed room articulated by therm figures, a precursor to the Grand Salon of Vaux-le-Vicomte, a small oval cabinet or private withdrawing room. The cabinet des Miroirs bears a refined decor, and a parquet floor inlaid with pewter and bone. Influence on architecture. The Château de Franconville at Saint-Martin-du-Tertre, built by Gabriel Hippolyte de Staël for the Duc de Massé in 1876, takes Maisons for its model. In the suburbs of Beijing, the Chinese multi-millionaire real estate developer Zhang Yuquan built a copy of the chateau, enhancing it by adding 2 wings from the Palace of Fontainebleau. The building cost $50 million, contains a hotel and seminar center, and opened in 2004. It is called Maisons-Laffitte, closing parenthesis. The Plaza Constitution Terminal train station opened on January 1, 1887 and rebuilt in 1900, is also an example of the influence of Maisons.